Welcome back. This is lesson number 4. You booked the part. So now what do you do? So lesson number 3 ended with you leaving your audition confident and happy with what you did in the room, hopefully. And now you're home and waiting. The phone rings and your agent tells you you're pinned. What does it mean to be pinned? This is really great. This pretty much means that you and maybe one other person are the people they're considering, and they're just double checking your dates, all those little questions that need to be answered about your availability to do the part. Now, being pinned doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get it. That's the unfortunate part of being pinned. It means that they're still considering other people. Hopefully it's just down to you and one other person. I'd say there's a 50-50 chance, but 2 people is better than the 20 people who auditioned for it. Now let's say in another couple hours, maybe another day goes by and your agent calls. You got the part. Congratulations. You did everything you needed to do in the room. So you booked this nice little guest star. What happens from here? Well, it could be a number of things. Your quote, or however much they're going to pay you, is already pretty much dictated by the fact that you're doing a guest star spot. There's very little wiggle room there unless you're a super famous person. Maybe not super famous, but a well-known actor who can demand a certain amount of pay for a role. And even these days, given how contracts are working these days, actors don't often get more than what that specific role pays. And that's just how it goes. But at least you know that going in. So you know that, I know going in for guest star spots, I'm getting my quote, which is a pretty decent quote for a week's worth of work. If I work more than that, I have a certain amount for that as well. If I work a day or 2 or 3, I also have a very specific quote for those days. So you know what you're getting, and when you get on set, you'll be signing a contract. Prior to getting on set, you'll get a call from wardrobe. They're gonna wanna know your sizes. Be honest about your sizes. I say this mostly because there was a period of time where I was just really self-conscious about my sizes. And frankly, the wardrobe person doesn't care how big or how small you are. They just want to be able to dress you appropriately. It's their job to make you look good. So the more information you know about your sizes, your height, your weight, your pant size, inseam, all those little details, cup size, all of that, it's just going to help them help you do your best on set. You'll set a time and a place for that, and that's a really cool part of the process, because now you're starting to put together all little pieces of your character, and it really is a group of people putting a puzzle together. Be really honest about how things fit and how things feel for you. Wardrobe's gonna have you try on a number of different costumes and outfits, and they'll take a picture for each one. I use the little trick of smiling a little happier and a little more excitedly about the outfits I really, really like. It's a subtle way to sort of convince the people who are making the decisions that you look better in that outfit. I learned that actually from a costume person. Now, sometimes they'll also call you to see if you have availability to go to a table read. Always go to the table read if you can make it. The only reason not to go is if you're booked on something else and you're already working, which is always a plus for them because it shows that you're a working actor. But the table read is a wonderful opportunity to meet the cast, get a sense and flow of how the show, that particular episode of the show, is going to work. And it gives you some time to sort of play around with your character. Now, also be careful. You really want to show up prepared. You want to be present and reading. I had a friend go in. She did the table read for her role, and it was great. And then they were having another table read directly after that, and they needed someone to read a secondary character, some other role that had nothing to do with her. She stayed to read that role, and because it wasn't her role, she didn't really put much effort into it. Well, her agent called her not long after to let her know that they needed her to re-audition for her own role because they were questioning how well she'd read the other role that had nothing to do with her. So this is to say, when you go in to do your part, really do your part. Try to match the energies of the other people in the room. Remember, the series regulars are series regulars. They've signed contracts for however long and they're there. But you need to do your part and come ready to do it. So it's your day to shoot. Make sure that you arrive on time, just like with everything else. You've probably gotten a call from the first AD. They are there to sort of give you the details of where you need to be. They've probably sent you your script. They've sent you a day out of days, how many days you're working. You might just be working 1, you might be working 3 or 4. Most 1 hour episodic shows shoot over 8 days, like an 8-day week is what they have. And you could shoot any number of those days. I've worked on shows where sometimes they've had to bring you in again on the weekend, which is always nice because that's more money. But 8 days tends to be the standard. You will most likely have your own little trailer, and that trailer, again, is often dictated by your role. If you are coming in as a background actor, you're probably somewhere in a holding room with a whole bunch of other actors. If you're coming in as a co-star or a guest star, you'll have a trailer, and that trailer and the size of that trailer, again, is dependent on how far along you are in your career, what you were able to negotiate with your agents, what your agents were able to get for you, or if you're even further along, what a lawyer may have already negotiated for you. And then sometimes it's just a matter of where they're shooting and what space they have. So keep that in mind, that it's not necessarily just about the fact that you're a smaller role. Sometimes it really just is a matter of what space they have. Now, what is the difference between a co-star and a guest star? Honestly, these days it can be really subtle. Sometimes it really is just dictated by the length of your role and the number of lines you have in the script. A co-star role often has maybe 1 scene with very few lines. A guest star role can be anywhere from 1 or 2 scenes to someone who's actually really integral to that whole episode. Obviously, you get paid more for a guest star role, but sometimes, if you're a seasoned actor like I am, and there's a co-star role that is a little meatier and it's really good, they will be willing to pay you your guest star rate for that co-star role. So there's just some little subtle differences to know about those 2 different parts. Either way, you're still a really important part, and you shouldn't get caught up in that kind of stuff early on. When you're just starting, you want to just book stuff. You want to get stuff on your resume. So if this was a co-star role, awesome. You're like 1 step ahead of the game. The minute you book, once you've done a number of co-stars, you're going to want to move into the guest stars. Those are the parts that are going to start getting you better pay, getting you more things to do as an actor, which is really what we want to do. That's really what it is. We want to show what it is that we have within us. And so the bigger your role, the more you have. But there are no small parts, just small actors. And I've met a lot of small actors, but we can talk about that at another point. So now you are in your trailer, you're getting ready, wardrobe has come and left your stuff in your room. You will probably go into hair and makeup before you put on your wardrobe. And that's always, again, a really great environment. I am a big fan of really getting to know the people who do your hair and your makeup and dress you. They are there to make you look your best so that you can do your best. Always treat these people with respect. Always be kind and pleasant, even if they're not. Because the reason they're not pleasant might be because there's some other, red tape, crazy bureaucracy drama going on that has nothing to do with you. As I stated earlier, your contract will be waiting for you in your trailer, most likely, or someone will come and hand it to you. And everything you need to initial or sign will be highlighted. Everything at this point should have been negotiated, so there shouldn't be any problems. Of course, if you have any questions, it's always good to get on your phone and talk to your agent. And they'll always make sure that there's a second copy for you. The only time that things might get a little, I don't want to say hairy or sticky, is if you happen to be incorporated. This is something that is only going to happen once you're further along the line and you've sort of established yourself as a working actor, you're making a certain amount of income and can afford the fees that come with becoming incorporated. But there's just different paperwork you have to sign, and you have to make sure that everything is correctly done so that they're paying you through your loan out company, and there's a whole process for that. But beyond that, right now, if you're just starting out or if you're, only been in it for a while, being incorporated isn't something you have to worry about. So now you might be called for rehearsal. You've been snacking, you've been napping, you've been waiting. A lot of this business is waiting. There's actually a saying called hurry up to wait. They'll hurry you to get things done, get your makeup done, get your wardrobe on, and then you sit and you wait anywhere from half hour to an hour, who knows, however long it takes. And actors always say, I get paid to wait, the acting is free. And really it often feels that way. But now you've been called to set, and you're called to set because we're going to do a rehearsal. And in this rehearsal, you're going to work out, where you move, when you move. For some of you, depending on whether or not there was a table read, this will be the first time that you're getting to say the lines out loud and hearing the lines out loud from the other actors. Don't feel like you have to perform it already in this moment. This really is for camera, for knowing which direction we're going in, to make sure actors aren't bumping into each other. Everyone knows where they are at this point. You are probably going to get to meet whoever the big actor in your scene might be, and that can be really exciting and a little bit nerve-wracking, especially if it's your first time, because you want to do a good job. Just remember that they need you. They need you to help move their storyline along, especially if you're a co-star or a guest star. You're there to help them. You guys are there to help each other. And in some ways, you are all equal. That being said, the stars of the show are still the stars of the show. And sometimes you'll get up to rehearsal and they'll be very cool, and you'll meet everybody and you'll get into rehearsal and the director is awesome and everyone's, one big happy family. I've been on shows like NCIS where it didn't matter if you had one line in the scene or you were integral to the scene happening. Everyone was really kind of treated as equals, and that's a great feeling. That's not going to happen on every set. After rehearsal, everyone regroups. You might be taken back to your trailer to go and sit and wait again for however much time. Otherwise, you will go back into hair and makeup just to make sure everything is set, that you're ready to go, your camera ready, so that the minute they're ready to go, there's no having to fix something that should have been dealt with. And then you're on. And this is, again, the opportunity where you get to show everything that you've sort of studied and worked, and all those little tools that you've been collecting in your toolbox along the way. This is where you get to do it. And honestly, I think the biggest advice I can give is to enjoy it. Take that big, deep breath and have a really good time. Be an amazing listener. Again, now you're getting to work with the actors, and people who are series regulars on shows, people who are recurring guest stars. They've been doing this a long time, and some of them will do some really wonderful things and give you some wonderful, stuff to play with. And feel free to play with them. This is what we like to see. The director will direct you and guide you. If you don't get a direction, it doesn't mean that they're not listening or paying attention to you. I used to be an actor who'd be like, well, they didn't say anything to me. Is it crappy? No, if they're not coming up to you and trying to fix stuff, you're doing a great job. And if something needs to be fixed, someone will say something to you. But don't stress it. Have a good time and enjoy the process. Okay, so let's back it up a little bit here and talk about testing. Now, testing is something that happens when you are going out for a series regular role. It involves a lot of the similar steps as regular auditions, but at some point you have to test for the network and for the studio. These are, the NBCs, the ABCs. These are the people who are going to decide whether they want to see your face on TV for weeks on end, hopefully for seasons on end, really bringing a character to life. The testing process is different in that everything gets negotiated before you go in. Depending on how seasoned of an actor you are, you have a quote. And if you don't have a quote, you'll be creating one now. The quote is, how much are you going to be getting paid per episode for each season? And I'd say the starting quote for most actors is anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000. Now, that's a lot of money if that's the first time you're getting it. It's amazing. It really is. It's a good feeling to feel like, wow, I'm kind of playing in the major leagues. And you are. And that's something to remember. It's still an audition, and you're probably going to do a lot of the same stuff you did in the initial audition to get you to the test. But you're now playing in the big leagues. And if you've already established a quote and you're now testing again for a second or third time, you're going in hoping to up that quote. The higher your quote is, the more money you're making per episode, but also it's kind of a status symbol. And that's part of this. I think sometimes as actors, especially actors who are really into the art of acting, we forget that this is also a business. The test, there are many different types of tests. Some tests will be a chemistry test. Let's say I read for a show and I had done the initial audition, the producer session, then they had me do a chemistry read with Don Cheadle. It didn't move on because we didn't have the chemistry we needed for that particular type of show. But this is, they'll often implement something like that to sort of see before they move you on to the next step, which is testing for the network, testing for the studio. This way, they already know ahead of time, oh, this person isn't going to work, we're not going to move on, or we really love what's happening between these two people, let's see, what it looks like. Tests can be done in a room with people sitting there watching. Often, actually, I'd say 99.9% of the time, if you're auditioning for anything comedic, that is going to be done with executives in a room. I think they really want to feel that energy, just as if you were doing a live show. A lot of the shows like Big Bang and things like that are filmed in front of a live studio audience. So that is important, having that interaction and seeing how you perform and engage an audience without actually interacting with the audience works. So be prepared for that. I did a test that wasn't a comedic show, at least not to the level of like a sitcom, and it was done in front of a room full of execs, and it's a little bit nerve-wracking to sit there with a bunch of people in suits. But I stood in the front of the room and just did the scene. I've done other tests where you're literally on the set. You act it out like they were filming it to make it part of the show. So there too, it's just one of those things you have to sort of understand how sets work and know where the camera is, know what's going on. They'll mark your marks like you would a regular shoot day, and they'll have you do your scenes. Of course, obviously for that kind of test specifically, you're completely off book and you don't carry your sides. Other tests where you're in the room, it's still okay to have your sides in case you need to look down for a line, but it is without a doubt 100% necessary to be memorized. You are at this point wanting to give them a performance that feels like they could just, if it were on a set, they could just pull it out and put it into a show. That's how prepared you have to come. One of the things I really want to stress about a test, and it's something that a fellow casting director friend told me one day when I was sort of, venting my frustrations about feeling like I was always testing and not getting it. She wanted to remind me, and it's something that you should, really remember if and when you get to this point. Once you're in that top 5, it's really just about, a lot of moving pieces that you don't necessarily control. If you've done the acting and you know your marks, you know your lines, and you've done the performance, you've gotten to this place, it's going to come down to things like the chemistry read, for instance. Did those people, was this a good match with these other 2 people, or were these 3 people a better match than this one? It might come down to height. Is she too tall to be paired with him? Is that going to be awkward? Are people going to make fun of that? Is that going to work for her? Whatever. There's so many little elements, and I really urge people not to get down if it doesn't go your way. It's something that I am constantly having to remind myself, because I was in the room, like I was there. You're in the room, so now you're in the mix. Another teacher used to tell me, just imagine a bullseye, and now you're in the mix and you're just circling the bullseye. And every time you test, every time you get in the room and it's down to 3 or 4 people, you're getting closer to the bullseye. And really that's what you're aiming for as an actor. You're aiming to do so well in the room that if they don't book you for it, they're going to call you in for something else. They remember you because you've left them something memorable. Now, something we haven't talked about yet are feature films. Everything's just a little bit different when you're dealing with feature films, because it depends on the size of the film, whether you're, this is a low budget indie or a big studio film. Those things are really going to dictate, again, how much you're getting paid. And people fight for their introducing titles, and even for who's going to get the and. If you see a show, it'll have all the names and it'll say and Jessica Lange or with so-and-so. I mean, people, they negotiate that. Your agents will sit there and fight over you getting the and or the with, and one of them is better than the other. I honestly don't remember which one is better than the other. For me, I'd take any of them. But those are things that get negotiated through your contract. So for, let's say, a smaller indie film, chances are you're gonna hope that, if it's a lot of actors who are of the same level, you're gonna hope for what we call favored nations, that essentially you're all gonna get about the same thing. All your trailers are gonna be about the same size, you're all getting paid around the same amount, because you're all doing the same amount of work and you're all about at the same level. It just seems fair to do that. Occasionally on a film, if you happen to be the lead and then there are other bigger names, you can also ask for some level of favored nations amongst that, because now you're in the group of people who are carrying the film. Occasionally, once you've reached a certain level, there will be certain asks of bonuses at the end of a film, like back-end deals. I think too, when you're doing a smaller budget film, or if you're doing a film that travels somewhere that requires you to be, out of town, not near your own space, not with your own car and things like that, that you are open to asking for things like, is there a travel allowance? Is there going to be transportation provided for me? Whether it's your own car that is rented for you or someone who's going to be taking you from place to place. You'll be getting per diem, which is an allotment of money for your daily needs for being somewhere for a certain amount of time. You're living out of a hotel room and you don't have access to normal things like a kitchen and all that. So a per diem allows you, cash and things for living purposes. Okay, so you've booked the part and now you're wondering, well, how do I really prepare before I get on set? This is a technique that'll work for TV as well as film, though I think it applies mostly to film, especially when you have to get to the heart of a character. And it has to do with researching and using sort of tools of research to sort of get to the heart of who this character might be. Whether it's you're doing a period piece and you have to research the time to understand, what was going on during that time, to know how this person would carry themselves based on their status, the clothing that you might be wearing in a certain time. Obviously, what you wear in 1930 is very different than what you would wear in 1970 or even today. Hairstyles can tell you a lot and inform your character a lot. Again, back to the wardrobe, even just, what someone wore in the 1930s if they had money versus someone who didn't have money is going to help inform your character even more. I've known actors who will sit and journal entry as they're in the voice of their characters in the hopes of sort of helping to find new and interesting things about them. Because the thing is, often you might have a lot of similarities with your character, but at the same time, you never want to do something as an actor that's going to limit the potential of your character. Just because you both know what it's like to grieve someone doesn't mean that, I don't know what it's like to lose a child, but my character might. So I don't want to just rely on my own personal experiences to get me to that point to understand the character. I want to do whatever research I can that's going to help me dig deeper. Some people will go as far as to, cut out clippings from newspapers, and in addition to doing a journal, literally have, pictures, that they've found in books or anything from the time, the era that reflects, the essence of their character, so that they already come prepared to set with this is who my character is. This is who I've established, how they would act, how they would walk, what they would do based on all this information I found on, 1975 women who love to go to the disco. I mean, the script is an amazing roadmap that has been given to you, a blueprint, it's a foundation. But now it's your job to sort of fill in the gaps and to help build the other floors of this beautiful home. You want to have a full character, and it's your time to play. And the more you add to it, just the better it's going to be. This week's added bonus is a visual guide of a call sheet. When I got my first gig and I got my call sheet, I remember looking at it with my friend wondering, what the heck does SWF mean? I have no clue. This way you'll have a nice guide that has all the different breakdowns of the acronyms, and you won't have to guess on your first day like I did. So this is sort of your typical call sheet. This one happens to be from a movie, Darkness Reigns, that I did a few years ago with my husband, director, writer, producer, Andrew P. Jones. You'll have the name of the project at the top. You'll often have the crew call right below that. Crew call is the time that everybody else gets there. The people who set up and do lighting and do sound, they all arrive at a certain time, and that time is going to dictate how the rest of the day goes. So you'll notice below that it has a shooting call as well as a lunchtime. That's all based on the time the crew gets there, not the time you get there. To the left of the call sheet, you have your director, your producer, your first AD. This is someone you really want to get to know. They often have a wealth of information for you. To the right side, you'll also notice the date. It'll tell you which day of shooting we are on, the weather, and as well as the sunrise and the sunset, because we're always fighting the sun when we are on set. So you see there's a section here called scene description. This whole area is pretty much going to tell you what's shooting for the day and who will be shooting in those particular scenes. And just next to that, you'll know who is in the scene based on the numbers of the cast. You have 3, 4, and 9. Each of those numbers corresponds to an actor just below, and each number also dictates the importance of the actor in the film. So if you're number 1 on the call sheet, you are essentially the star, the big name, whoever's carrying the film, and there's a ranking system below that. Now, next to the cast, you have day or night, and then we'll also tell you the page count. So essentially, the page count is important because it's letting you know what your workload is. As you'll see, if you follow the column all the way down to the bottom, it says that the page count for this day was 9 5/8 pages, which is a whole lot of work to try to get done. I'd say on average, if you're working on TV, you're doing maybe 2-3 pages for a day, if that. I mean, you have a lot of luxury on bigger shows. This was an independent film. There were fewer days to shoot, and therefore more had to get done on each day. Now, off here to the right, we have a section called location. Often you'll have this actually listed below the crew call and all that, but on this particular call sheet, we'll have it here to the right. It has the production office information. You'll also notice there's the cast and crew parking. This particular call sheet says see map, so there was a map sent to the actors and crew in addition to this. But usually on a call sheet, you'll have an address. You also have certain instructions about where people can park and should park. And then just below that, it has a hospital, which again is probably one of the most important things to remember, just in case there's any kind of emergency. We know exactly where to go and who to call if we need to. So you'll notice next to each actor's name, you have the character name, and then you'll have a call time, the time you need to show up on set. And I recommend showing up 15 minutes before that time. And then next to that, you will see status. For instance, you'll see that Zachary has a W under status, as well as myself, Leonata Washington. And then you have Ford Fanter with a WF. And a little bit lower, you'll see that Laura has SWF. SWF stands for start, work, finish. She is starting that day, working that day, and this will also be her last day of work. Zach and I both only had W's, so that means we are working that day. We probably started several days earlier, and we will be finishing sometime down the line. Ford is working on this day. He's also having his last day of work on this day. Next to status, we have a column here which designates what time you should be at hair and makeup. And next to that is the time that they would expect you on set. Then there's the comments and pickups. This allows us to know who's getting picked up at a certain place. You know, if you're on location somewhere shooting and you have a number of actors staying at hotels, or some actors might be from that city or state you're filming in, and so they can drive themselves. This just lets you know where all your little moving parts are and where they're expected to be at a certain time. Moving right along, just below the listed actors, you will see a section that has atmosphere, stand-in, special instructions. This is where you're going to list all the props you're going to need, all of the stand-ins and extras that you need in a scene moving around. This is where you have all the special effects needs. Like in this case, we have black ooze that was going to come out of the wall, so we needed to have the black ooze present on set and ready to go. Call sheet will always tell you what's going to be coming up in the following days.
This information is important as well for you as an actor because it allows you to know what scenes you're doing the next day, so you know what lines to have memorized, what scenes to be prepared for. It helps you also know where we are in the script. We often film out of order, so it's really up to you as an actor to sort of remember where you are emotionally in a moment. On the back side of your call sheet, there is listed every crew member who's working on set in their different departments. And just, I think, always important for me, I like to know people's names. I think it says something about you when you can walk on a set and sort of have a sense of who people are. Not every call sheet is formatted this way. You may find minor variations across the board, depending on whether it's film or TV or who happened to be formatting it that day. But at the end of the day, they all have the same information.